welcome to episode 21 of the Press Forward podcast. I'm Nathan Wrigley, and I'd like to thank you for joining us again. And if this is your first time with us, I hope that you like it and that you find it useful. The Press Forward podcast is created by WP and Up. We're a non-profit working in the WordPress space to help you or your colleagues, in fact anyone. You can find out more about the mission at wpandup.org. We'd love for you to get involved with WP and Up, and this can be done in many ways. You could talk about this podcast on social media, or talk about it on your own website. You could rate it on Apple Podcasts, or you can subscribe to us on your favourite podcast player, which can be done by going to wpandup.org/podcast-feed. There's a couple of things that I'd like to tell you about this week. If you've listened in before, you'll know about the Head 2 project that we've created. It's a 3,000 kilometre bike ride that members of WP and Up are undertaking next year. The intention is to show that little changes can have a big impact over time. You see, we're not athletes, and we're getting on with our lives whilst adapting them slightly to accommodate the time needed to train for this ride. We've started to draw up our plans and to modify our lives slightly, taking great care about what we eat and drink, as well as making sure that we exercise more. We're figuring this all out as we go. How long should each day of the ride be? What kind of exercise regime should we undertake to prepare us best? Should we choose a route which avoids inner cities and instead take cycle paths? We don't really have the answers yet, but we've committed to working together regularly to make the project a success. We'll be creating more content about this project in the future, and we'll try to be as open as possible about how it all evolves. If you're interested in any aspect of this project, or how you could help, how you can spread the word, please go to head2.org. The Press Forward podcast is brought to you today by Green Geeks. Green Geeks offers an awesome managed web hosting platform that's built for speed, security and scalability whilst being environmentally friendly. Enjoy a better web hosting experience for your WordPress website, backed by 24/7 expert support. And we thank Green Geeks for helping us to put on the Press Forward podcast. If you happen to be a regular listener to the Press Forward podcast, then you'll know that a few months ago we took a team to WordCamp EU in Berlin. I was tasked with interviewing as many WordPressers as possible. It was great standing in the corridor watching the nearly 3,000 attendees file in and out of the talks. The fact that we chose the corridor was great. It meant that people could find us easily, but it also meant that there was quite a lot of background noise. The interviews were really varied, and you can catch the ones that you perhaps have already missed by going to the Press Forward podcast feed at wpandup.org/podcasts. Okay, so on to today's episode. Today, I talk with Gary Pendergast. Gary has been working with WordPress for a long time, and his many contributions have really shaped the way that WordPress has developed. He's an employee of Automattic, but is seconded back into the open source project on a full-time basis. We talk about how he got started with WordPress, what he's been involved in, and where he hopes the project goes in the future. Having been the project lead for multiple releases, we talk about what that responsibility feels like, being the person to push the commit button and update hundreds of thousands of sites. We get into his love of the WordPress community and how he regards it as somewhat special, a place in which he's made real friends over the years. He's a very knowledgeable WordPress contributor, and much of his work will, no doubt, have been used by you at some point. He's also a very calming figure, and somebody that I warmed to very much in our short time together. And so, without further ado, I bring you Gary Pendergast. So I'm joined
Well, I should probably say where we are to begin with. We are exactly where are we? We're outside of track 1
Yeah.
in WordCamp, and I'm joined today by Gary Pendergast. Hello, Gary.
Hi there. It's
How you
good to be
doing?
here. That's very good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you come? I'm detecting from your accent that you might be from Australia.
I am indeed.
Have you come from Australia
It's
today?
it's a long way to travel, but yes, I have come over from Australia to
Oh, really?
to visit Berlin.
Have
and
you?
WordCamp
Are
Europe.
you just coming for this, or?
Just for this, like I arrived a few days ago for had a few meetings and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm over for WordCamp Europe, then back home again.
Do you do this stuff quite a lot?
Yeah, a few times a year. Like I'll come to the big WordCamps and fly around a bit, talk to people about WordPress and that kind of thing.
Because you're quite serious about WordPress, aren't you?
Yeah, I've kind of employed to. My time is donated full time to the WordPress project, so I work on WordPress core and kind of talk to people and help people get started with contributing and anything really that needs to be done.
How does it work? When you say your time has been donated, what does that mean?
So I'm employed by Automattic, but my role is to work on the WordPress open source project, and so it means that while I'm certainly I'm employed by Automattic, and I get kind of that internal view of like WordPress.com and Jetpack and the products that we provide. My main focus and my priorities are the WordPress open source project, and sometimes that aligns with what Automattic needs. Sometimes it doesn't, but I'm always consider Automattic as just being one constituent in the WordPress world.
Did you get employed by Automattic on the strength of things that you'd done for the WordPress project?
I didn't actually start contributing to WordPress core until after I joined Automattic. I'd really only I kind of found out about. I built a site for WordPress many years ago. I picked up some contract work and ended up writing some plugins and found out about Automattic then, and was like, oh, they sound like a cool company. I think I'll apply to join, and started working for Automattic, and then kind of switched over to working on WordPress core as well.
Do you ever is there ever a conflict of interest where the stuff that you want to do for WordPress, like you said, it might not always align with what Automattic want? Is there some sort of mechanism for, what's the word, for being told, no, you must do it this way, or are you completely autonomous?
I think, I've never been in a situation where there was a clash between what Automattic wanted and what was the right thing for WordPress. And that's part of WordPress is a very extendable tool that we can. There's always a case of if someone, whether it be Automattic or anyone really who uses WordPress, if they need a filter or an action to hook into somewhere in WordPress, then we can just put that in and they can do their own thing.
Do you in Australia is WordPress, like we're stood in about 3,000? There's about 3,000 people roughly attending this, so it's pretty big in Europe. You know, go to the UK. There's a lot of people using WordPress. Same in Australia. Same sort of community spirit. Same event setup. All of that.
Absolutely. So it's the same kind of thing in Australia as well. There are meetups in all the major cities and some of the smaller regional cities as well. There are pretty regular WordCamps, and I think perhaps because we're Australians are just kind of used to having to fly a long way to get to anywhere. Then it's a case of, I only have to fly 2 hours to get to this WordCamp, so that's fine.
And do you kind of like come to these events thinking, okay, I'm going to go to socialize, I'm going to go to talks, I'm going to hang out in the hallway? Do you have like an agenda? Have you gone through the list going, going to do that, going to listen to that?
Yeah, certainly. Like I'll be going to a few talks, and a lot of what I'm here to do is because I'm working on WordPress core itself. Then there's a lot of other people who do that part-time or full-time. So being able to have some face-to-face time with people who are effectively my colleagues, even if we're not employed by the same companies, it's fun to hang out and just have some social time.
Yeah, and Automattic, I think, I could be wrong about this, to correct the numbers, I think there's 900.
Yeah, it's about 900 now. It's growing very big.
How does that even work? How do you get anything done? How do you coordinate what must be done?
I mean, it's certainly grown a lot from its early days. When I first started contracting for Automattic, it was about 20 people, and then when I came on full time, it was about 100 people, and it's blown since then. And we have a lot of people working on different things. There's people who work on WordPress core. There's people who work on the WordPress mobile apps. There's people who work on WordPress.com or Jetpack or WooCommerce. Or we have a huge we call our support people happiness engineers. That's their job is to engineer happiness. And so we have a huge group of people whose job is to make sure that our customers can do what they want with WordPress.
And in the same way that all the people who are into the WordPress project come to a place like this, do you ever get 900 of you actually in the same place at the same time to, shake hands and say hello?
So once a year we have the what we call the grand meetup, as the full company gets together in one place.
What if anything goes wrong?
For the critical teams, there are considerations that, we don't fly all of systems on the same plane. And we have, again, with happiness, because we need to be able to, happiness engineers need to be available for our customers. So some will be flying in a little bit early or leaving a little bit later to make sure that there's always someone online when they need help.
Yeah, you can't make that mistake.
Yeah.
So where was the last one?
Well, both last year and this year again will be in Orlando, Florida. So a bit of a Disney adventure. It's fun. It's also the company's getting so big that we actually need to.
You need to rent a Disneyland.
We need to basically hire out an entire hotel and.
How can you account? Like, why did WordPress get so big? How has it become this behemoth? This 34% of the internet thing. Why wasn't it Drupal? Why wasn't it Joomla? What makes WordPress special?
I think there are a couple of key things there. I think the focus on the user experience was always really important to WordPress. It's always been that way, and always about making it look nice, making you be able to make a site that looks good, really simply. And the other thing I think was key was how we always focus on backwards compatibility and making sure we don't break things, so that you can always click upgrade or get an auto upgrade and it will automatically work. So people can write plugins and write themes for WordPress and know that they'll just keep working. They don't need to be constantly having to rewrite their stuff just to keep it working with the latest version.
Yeah, for me it was all about, like what you just said. When I was using Drupal for years, I really enjoyed it. Great platform, still like it. But when I came across WordPress for the first time, I've been using it for about 5 years. The first thing immediately for me is, it looks really nice. Yeah. It actually looks attractive. I don't have to, it's not ugly. That was a really important thing. So you've come to WordCamp in Europe. You've told us a little bit about what you're going to do. Tell us who you're excited to see. What specific talks are you going to go to?
Oh, wow. I think, I always enjoy, Matt's summer update.
Yeah, he's the whole thing, isn't
he? So it's part of it, and having it is kind of nice to have that person who can kind of be the face of WordPress and who can give that broad view of what's going on and what's the plan with WordPress. And also, I think customize it a bit. We're in Europe. We're at WordCamp Europe. We customize it a bit for European audience. So we're we see with the GDPR and some of the upcoming privacy legislation in the EU that Europeans are more privacy conscious than an American audience might be, or even an Australian audience. So being able to talk about how WordPress is working towards something that works for everyone around the world, regardless of what their specific priorities are, I think it's important too.
You were talking earlier about backwards compatibility. Has there ever been a time where you've had to not do things which might have been in the best interests of WordPress in order to keep it compatible?
I think I don't know that we've necessarily had to not do things. It's perhaps we've had to do things in a different way, or we've had to take more time to do them in a way that's backwards compatible. I kind of look at it as it's better for me to spend 6 months working on making something that works for everyone, versus I spend a week, but then 10,000 developers around the world have to spend 2 days. So the time trade-off is kind of, it's really, really simple to choose that trade-off. A good example was several years ago there was a security issue in WordPress, which has kind of come to be known as the Trojan emoji bug, where you could trigger it by if you put an emoji in a comment field, then you were able to break into the site. To fix a simple fix, it took me about half an hour to write it. Unfortunately, it would have broken 90% of WordPress sites.
Okay.
So it was better for myself and for several members of the security team to take close to a year, I think. It took us to write something that worked in a completely backwards compatible way. And we rolled it out, and there was a few minor bugs, but nothing serious. And every WordPress site just kept running, but was also protected. There was no longer this giant security issue that needed to be fixed.
Do you ever hover over that commit button with trepidation and fear? Is there ever a point where you're thinking, I don't know whether I want to do this?
The commit button, not so much. We kind of, I mean, it's all version control. So if something's broken, we can roll it back. It's still like, even after leading multiple releases and many security releases and minor releases and all that kind of thing, it's still, when it comes to actually clicking the button to release a version of WordPress, to know that it's going to be, like, the instant I push that out, it's going to be rolling out to tens or hundreds of thousands of sites a minute. It's always a little bit, okay, have I done everything? Have I gone through the checklist? Am I sure it's all ready to go?
Do you have like procedures about times of day that you've got to do it? So, for example, have you got to do it when you arrive to work, if you like, so that you've got the rest of the day should something go wrong, or like processes?
For releases, we tend to aim for, particularly security releases, we tend to aim for middle of the week, so it's not going to cross over into people's weekends, and usually it would be like late afternoon Europe time, daytime US time. It might be early morning for Australia or Asia, but they'll also be up in a couple of hours. So we found that gives us a good crossover for everyone, so that if they need to be pushing out updates to their systems as quickly as possible, then they can do that.
How much autonomy do you have as a core contributor to push the button? Is there like a protocol that you've got to go through, including checks and balances from X, Y, and Z person? Or is it, Gary, you can do what you want?
I mean, strictly speaking, yes, I can just do it, but it's also a case of I'm not able to do that without people seeing, oh, what are you doing, Gary?
Yeah, what's going on?
Should you really be pushing that out now? And we're looking at that too, like how we can protect that, make updates more secure. So
yes.
part of that is,
yes,
in recent releases, we're now signing the packages.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Make sure that we're that nobody's kind of attacking the packages and trying to get people to download the wrong thing, and the other. And so then we're looking at how we can automate more of the building of the packages and have some sort of sign-off system where 2 people need to click a button before it will actually push the package out.
Oh, nice. So it's not all on Gary's shoulders. It
Yeah.
could,
Yes.
make you sleep better at night. If you were beginning with WordPress now, let's say that this is your first event. You've installed WordPress a couple of times and done a few things and think, oh, I like WordPress. Yeah. How do you get involved? How do you begin to become somebody that is contributing to WordPress itself?
I guess it kind of depends upon what you want to do and how you think you'd like to contribute. I mean, I come from a development background, so certainly I look at how you can code for WordPress, but whether you happen to be a designer or a community organizer, or you happen to be good at writing documentation, there are plenty of different ways. And so we have a site called Make WordPress. It's make.wordpress.org, and that's kind of where the different teams that have different focuses on WordPress, that's where they all have their blogs where they'll be posting updates, what they're working on. Then we also use Slack for communicating, for meetings and for chatting. It's very much about having a community of people who are all working towards the same thing, but are able to find find their niche and able to find a place where they feel they're able to contribute to WordPress.
Yeah. And yesterday, of course, there was the Contributor Day.
Yeah.
Again, for somebody who's listening to this, they may not even vaguely know what that is. What is that? What do people do when they come to a Contributor Day at a WordCamp?
So they've even Contributor Days have evolved. They back very, very early on, they used to be called Developer Days. Like, it was very development focused, but it's not what it is anymore. It's about all of the different ways that you can contribute to WordPress, and it's about effectively being able to sit down at a table with someone who's been contributing for a while in whatever area you're interested in, and being able to talk through with them, like, how do we do this, and they're able to point out, hey, here are some easy issues that you might like to start. There's, I mean, even beyond the ones that I mentioned, like there's marketing team or the polyglots team who work on translations.
I love that word.
It's a very cool word.
But so you don't need to be a coder. I mean, the breadth and depth of it is pretty astonishing. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and their job at Contrib Day was to try and work out a process for subtitling the WordPress.tv talks, so that could be automated, so that it could go straight into German or straight into whatever English, any kind of language. So there's absolutely tons of scope. Would you say that, like, a WordCamp, something like this, is a good place to start, or would you advise people to kind of get online and go to make.wordpress.org to begin with? Is it, well, yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that they're both valid ways to start. If you're able to attend a WordCamp, then it's really, really it's really helpful to be able to talk to someone in person and kind of get an idea of what you can do. Even if you don't go to a Contributor Day, most WordCamps will have a table with how to start contributing information, and there'll be people who can talk to you about that. If you're not able to attend a WordCamp, then certainly going online will help. Like, all of the teams have some sort of a meeting for where you can turn up, and they'll walk you through how you can get started with their particular team.
Yeah, with events like this, do you turn up and find that I'm going to use the word mates? Have you got actual real mates in WordPress?
Yeah, there are plenty of people who I've been working with for so long, and it's not just a thing where you work in a kind of a stereotypical office environment and you're there from 9 to 5 and that's it. No, these are people who are genuine friends who I've been I've met their families and we've hung out together, and it's not just about work. It's about just we enjoy each other's company.
Do you come to these things with like a barrage of people who you want to see and catch up with, and you've got your laundry list of good mates?
I certainly, like, there's always people that I'll want to catch up with, but there's this WordCamp, I think, is 3,000 people attending. It's huge. I'm never going to be able to meet everyone who I might know, but it's also like I'm here to meet new people as well. Like, there's plenty of people for whom this is their first WordCamp, or they haven't contributed before. I think we had just a Contributor Day yesterday. There were some 160 something people who'd never contributed to WordPress before, and they were there to make their first effort, and so that was really cool to see.
The first time I came to a WordCamp, I kind of stood and was a bit awkward, kind of, no mates.
Yep.
Nathan sort of stood in a corner and kind of expected it, because I'd heard about these WordCamps, I kind of expected it to be just easy, and I'd stand in the room and people would flock towards me, not knowing who I was. But then kind of figured out, okay, I've got to make a bit of an effort. And yeah, I'm exactly like you. I've got a whole bunch of people that I want to see when I come to these things, and they genuinely are. Yeah. Like real friends. I mean, with modern social media, it's easy to sort of keep up with these people. But yeah, I think this community is pretty remarkable. I don't know of anybody who works in another industry who has anything but dread about going. The idea I've got to go to a conference in Berlin for 3 days. It's like, I've got to go to a conference in Berlin. I'm so not looking forward to it. But I'm delighted to be here. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And that's why I fly from Australia. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to get on a plane and fly for 30 hours to go to a conference I don't want to be at. I'm here because I genuinely enjoy it, because there are people that I really actually want to see and hang out with. And I've been doing WordPress for so long now, but there's always something new that I learn here.
Yeah. Speaking of new, well, not so much new.
Yeah.
Do you think? So if we roll back the clock 10 years, this event would be, well, it wouldn't be here for a start, but the whole WordPress thing would be considerably smaller. Do you think in 10 years' time we'll still be talking about WordPress? Do you think there's a bright future for it? Do you foresee a nice horizon, or is it?
I think so. I think what we're looking at in 10 years' time, we're certainly looking at a WordPress that's continuing to grow. Like it's not about. I don't think WordPress is slowing down anytime soon. It's even if you look at the basic stats that we kind of measure, 30-something% of sites, of the top however many sites use WordPress, and those numbers continue to grow. It's not somewhere where we're slowing down. I think it's the WordPress that we see today will be different to the WordPress that we see in 10 years, certainly, where for even the obvious things, like where mobile was rapidly moving towards the dominant platform. It's already the dominant platform. It's moving towards being really the only platform. So, like, we can certainly see where WordPress will look different, but I think as a community, we'll still be able to grow but keep that same kind of feel that we're meeting with friends. It's the technology that we happen to use doesn't really make a difference.
Do you work on things in the dark? Do you have things like at that sort of top level, if you like? Are there things that you're working on which are not necessarily for public consumption, which might be what WordPress looks like in 10 years, or is everything out in the open? We can all inspect what you're working on.
Do you want me to reveal WordPress
tell
secrets?
me what's gonna. Tell me the future.
Honestly, it's very, very open. Like the things that I'm working on are open source. Like and that's one of the things I love, is that I'm able to give all of this back. I'm not just working on this app to make some bank an extra 0.5% richer or something. It's something about being able to build something that matters and build it in a way that people are able to take it and use it and change it and learn from it and really, I think it's about having that community where we're all able to contribute to, and I'm able to contribute in my way, and you're able to contribute in your way with this podcast, and people contribute in all sorts of ways. It's about all of us coming together with our individual strengths to make something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, that's a nice answer. Do you find like in life, so before you got sort of into WordPress and things, did you find yourself to be the kind of person that needed to do important work, something which was like had a bit of moral backbone to it, something that felt significant and meaningful? And do you feel that about WordPress? Do you think, like, as an example, if I like, I'm not trying to denigrate this, but if, for example, I worked, I don't know, like you said, in a bank, and the whole purpose of my existence was to generate this 0.5% extra, or to, make the shareholders happy, I don't think that would speak to me. I think ultimately I would feel a bit miserable doing that.
I think it's a case of finding your own meaning. It's if like I've found a job that I enjoy, and I feel that gives meaning. But also, if you do happen to work in an office job where it's just a 9 to 5, and you go to work, you do your thing, and you go home, and that's it, you will have meaning in other ways, whether it be friends and family, whether it be social issues, whatever it happens to be. It's I think everyone makes their own meaning. It's no better or worse for it to be a open source project like WordPress versus raising a family versus having a group of friends that support each other versus taking care of your community.
I'm always trying to pinpoint exactly what it is that makes this community special, because that is the talk, right? Everybody talks about how great the WordPress community is, and I'm often wrangling with, okay, why is that? How is it that 3,000 people can get together in a space and it's a nice event, and people aren't, Well, the ego seems to be nowhere in existence. You know, people are just genuinely open. And so I'm always thinking, what is it about these people that makes them so, well, that makes it such a nice community to be in? Do you feel that, though? Do you feel it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's intentional. Like this, it's not an accident that WordPress is a nice community to be in. It's that people who are in leadership, whether it be from Matt or Josepha, or it's a thing that I care about. It's a thing that like core developers care about, and lead designers and community leads, that people want this to be a nice space, and so they put the work in to make it a nice space.
Yeah, I can't pin it. I wish I could, but I have that conversation on a sort of weekly basis. You know, why is it so nice? And I have no idea why it's so nice. Is there anything in your time working with WordPress, any one story that you think that was the highlight of it so far? All my WordPress things, if I could repeat one moment.
I think it's really the moments with friends that come to mind. It's like we kind of have, I mean, even looking at this from I work on WordPress core, and I work with developers and lead developers, and we can kind of, it can be easy to forget that everyone there, they might be making decisions about WordPress, and they might be, and it might be sometimes it's something you disagree with, but at the end of the day, they're still people. And so these are people who are my friends, who I've worked with for a long time, who I'll come to these events, and we'll hang out, and we'll have fun times, and we'll kind of just kick back and chat. It's those are the things that I find that I remember.
Yeah, that's a nice answer. How do you overcome disagreements with the direction that things should be going? So I don't really have an example of that, but you know, there must have been situations in the past where a significant amount of people thought, this is where we should go. We'd like to do this to WordPress, and some people said, no, we want it to stay just how it is, or modify. Is it like a personality contest? Does somebody have the final vote? How do things get done as opposed to not get done?
I mean, as Matt's position is the project lead, and so at the end of the day, it is Matt's decision if something is going to happen or not. And that's, I think that's an important aspect of that. And like, I do work closely with Matt, so I can say that he's always open to listening to arguments, and he wants to hear like why you feel that, okay, this might not be a good idea, or we could do this differently. So I think we can have those genuine discussions and figure out a way that works for everyone. It's very, very rare that there's a situation where it's the problem is so polar opposite that you can't possibly come to a middle ground that's either one thing or the other, and there's no in between. It's the vast majority of the time there's a way that we can make it work for everyone.
Yeah. How do you feel? So you know where I'm going. How do you feel about like the last? Well, when was it? November the 11th, I think, something like that. The whole Gutenberg thing, because that's been an interesting 6 months, hasn't it, or more? Do you feel happy where we are now? Has it got the support that you'd hoped it would?
I think it's moving in a good direction. It was certainly a controversial change. And in some ways that was certainly on people like me who were in that leadership team who, for whatever reason, we didn't manage to communicate why this change was important and what it meant, and how you could come along and how you could change your stuff to work with it. I don't know that we necessarily communicated that as well as we could have, but I think also this is a strength of the WordPress community, that we had that disagreement, and then at the end of the day, as I said, Matt, as the project lead, he made that decision. It was released, and people have. It does feel like the entire community has kind of taken a step back and gone, okay, this is how we're working with it now. This is what we can do, whether it be I need to use the Classic Editor plugin for a while, or I need to update my plugins or my themes to take advantage of Gutenberg. I think that people are looking at it from a very practical viewpoint.
Yeah. So we talked a moment ago about how nice the WordPress community is. This was an example where potentially, there were disagreements, shall we say? You can answer this question how you like, really. Does it ever get to you on sort of like a personal level? Do you ever sort of feel, oh, leave me alone?
Absolutely. Like I'm still a person too. Like and it can be difficult to remember that we're even when we're having these strong disagreements where people are extraordinarily passionate about the whatever the topic has to be, Gutenberg for this instance, we can still have those disagreements and then move on from them and come back together and and realize that we can keep together and build and keep building WordPress into this really cool thing.
Do you get a sense that that's happened? Like there's been sort of a healing process? Do you feel that heat has gone down a little bit?
I think in a lot of ways, yes.
Yeah.
I think that there are still ways that we can make it better, where whether it be helping people move their stuff over to Gutenberg, or continuing to kind of explain what's happening, or give people more insight to how these decisions are made. And I think that kind of openness, which WordPress has always been about openness. So ensuring that even if like I might feel as a person in WordPress leadership that I'm open and explaining my actions and decisions, if the rest of the community doesn't feel that, then clearly there's clearly work to be done to bridge that gap. And so there's still work to be done to talk about how decisions are made and how people can get involved and how people can help affect change. But I don't think that there's something inherently broken. It's something that we just need to work on helping everyone get involved.
Have there been steps taken to sort of, you talked earlier about, it may have been a communications thing. Yeah. Have things been sort of modified, changed in order to communicate future things differently?
Absolutely. So I think if you follow the Make WordPress sites, and in particular Make Updates is a central one looking at a broader project view. Josepha, as WordPress Executive Director, has been talking a lot about how leadership is structured in WordPress, and how we can standardize it across all of the teams, and how we can document it, and how people can feel confident that they can get involved. And so I think that's obviously an important topic to the wider WordPress community, and so that's something that we want to make sure that WordPress is adjusting itself to.
It's just in the very, very near future, so by that I mean 6 months, a year, something like that. Is there anything that you're excited about, something that you think this is such a nice feature that we're going to add?
I think certainly how Gutenberg is continuing to evolve. It's like where it's moving beyond kind of this page editor into this more full site editor. I think that's really exciting to see where that goes, and you can see early experiments in it. If you install a Gutenberg plugin where it's continuing to evolve, and there are other plugins where people are experimenting. Oh, hey, what happens if we build something that people can do entire site layouts with? It's everything there is an iteration, so let's get it out there and people can try it out and give some feedback, and we can iterate on it. I think that's very cool.
Do you think that's where it will end up? So slightly more long term, a couple of years from now. Do you think WordPress will be like a page builder kind of product?
I think in some ways, yes. It may not, like when you say page builder, it brings to mind like these huge, complex, customizable systems, which will always have a place. Like there are always going to be sites that need that, but WordPress core itself might not need to have that kind of level of customizability and that kind of level of being able to tweak every single setting. But as WordPress has always done, it'll have a way for plugins to hook into that and provide that extensibility.
The thing, I suppose, from the end user's point of view, like me, is we don't have any oversight into the amount of people who are using things, and therefore, it's got to be at least this minimum thing, and we can't add every bell and every whistle, otherwise it becomes completely unusable for the vast majority.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, how many websites roughly do you know? How big is WordPress?
We talk about it being 30-something% of the. They mention the top 10 million sites, but also if you extend that to the entire internet, it's kind of interesting that you don't really know how many websites there are, because it's just impossible to measure just by the way the internet works.
Yeah,
we can't really measure it. So whether if there's a billion sites, we could potentially extrapolate that to say there might be 100 million WordPress sites.
Are there any things that you feel in your time doing WordPress you wish you'd done differently? Like, that would have been a nice thing not to have happened, or you hit the commit button accidentally or something like that.
I think there are plenty of commits where I've had to go, oh wait, I really messed that one up.
Oh no.
But again, because it's just code, so it can always be fixed up and it can always be changed or reverted. I don't think there's ever really been anything that I've gone, we shouldn't have done that. It's always a case of maybe something could have been done better, and we then proceed to do it better. Whether that happens to be code or whether that happens to be talking about something that's coming up. I don't think that there's anything where it's just gone, well, that was the wrong direction entirely.
Yeah. Talking about this specific event, what's one of the things you're looking forward to in the next couple of days?
I think I always enjoy Contributor Day. It's always a great chance to see, even for me, to see what other teams are doing. Like what are they focusing on? What are their priorities? So that's always fun, and I do enjoy the after party. I don't like. I hear it's an 80s theme this year, which is not so much my thing, but that's all right. It's always a case of if folks want to get dressed up, then absolutely, but you don't have to do that.
No. I think I'm probably not going to be getting dressed up in all the 80s stuff.
You're not going to get on your hammer pants and...
No, I think I'd look a bit ridiculous. Yeah.
Or was that 90s? I don't
yeah.
know.
Do you think you'll be staying with WordPress? You got any plans to do something else in the future? Side projects that you're working on? Interesting little Gary Pendergast stuff?
Nothing big at the moment. I'm like, there's the WordPress world is so big that there's a huge variety of things I can do while staying in the WordPress world. Like a project I've been working on recently as a tool to help people contribute to WordPress core, to more easily set up an environment where they can get WordPress running, and they can build patches and upload them into the ticket tracking system, and generally feel like they don't have to go through some sort of weird technical impossible system just to contribute a bug fix.
Yeah. Do you still love writing code?
I do. Like I tend to swing back and forth between I'll spend time more on project leadership and managing how a change might be done, or things like that, and sometimes I'll swing more to I feel like just writing some code for a bit and fixing some bugs. And
do you have that? You have that autonomy? You can sort of decide what your day looks like, or is there here, Gary, here's your list. Do these.
It's more of a for periods of time. I'm not going to be switching back and forth on a daily basis.
But Hawaii for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. But it's the kind of thing where certainly I get to choose a lot of what I work on, what I think is most valuable for the WordPress community as a whole.
We've got children at this event.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think that's amazing.
I love that the the event feels is so inclusive that people can bring children, and there's childcare facilities, and there's workshops specifically for kids to play with WordPress.
To use WordPress for kids. That's amazing.
That it feels like a place where you can bring kids, and they'll be safe to hang out and run around, and there'll be things that will keep them interested as well.
Do you think this is a good career? You know, like if you were raising your kids and attending these kind of things, would you be telling the younger generation, writing code, being involved in WordPress, it's a solid thing to do for your future?
I think so. I think it's not necessarily writing code. It's a thing of like we were talking about earlier. If you're going to choose a thing to be passionate about, then I think the WordPress project is a reasonable choice. It's a way that you can feel that you're making a difference on a grand scale. That we kind of talk about WordPress as democratizing publishing. It's giving anyone the ability to publish their thoughts and to let the world know what they're thinking, which even 50, 70 years ago was impossible. You couldn't do it. There were TV, or there was newspaper, or you could maybe make up a little magazine that you distribute to a handful of friends, but there was no way you could talk to people all over the world on such a massive scale, which it's pretty incredible. There's no denying it comes with its own challenges. You look at some of the controversy around Twitter or Facebook about how they're connecting extremists as well as connecting normal people. So how we balance that, how we make these tools available to everyone with trying to avoid the downside of it, it's a difficult problem, and I don't think anyone's really solved it yet. I don't think but I think there are a lot of good ideas that are being tried out, and ways where we can make it better.
That's an interesting question, because obviously, Facebook or what have you, they've got policies in order to mitigate those things. Whether they've worked in the past is a moot point. But does WordPress have a responsibility for any of that stuff, do you think? Or does it just release it and say, you do what you like with it, and let's hope that it's done for the good of humanity?
It's a difficult problem, and it's certainly like WordPress. If you download a copy of WordPress and install it somewhere, and you start writing hateful content, there's not really anything WordPress can do about that. Like we can't take your site down because it's not a thing that we control. But I think that certainly we can be involved in the conversations with hosts or with service providers, and be saying, hey, we think it's important that your policies are able to deal with these situations, and that we're able to kind of work together for a better internet for everyone.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that question is, but it feels like WordPress.
I mean, if you did, then I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I'll just deliver the answer to you. Security-related issues. Does that kind of stuff keep you awake at night? Do the bad guys just get better? Do you have to work harder year on year to keep WordPress ticking along and not falling down and infecting? And
I think for people who don't really keep up with security, which or don't keep up with kind of the intricacies of what security researchers do, the bugs, the security issues that are reported I find them fascinating, because they are the steps that the researcher has obviously had to go through to discover this bug, to find that if we craft this thing in this very, very specific way, then it'll trigger this bug, which triggers this bug, which triggers this bug, which triggers this bug, which escalates my permissions slightly, but lets me do this thing, which triggers that bug, which triggers that bug, which and so on. And like the ability to the mindset that actually lets people investigate and find these issues is amazing. So
amazing problem solvers. They're just on the wrong side of the fence.
We have a security bug reporting program, and we feel that there are people who are really talented at this, but historically the only way for them to make money has been to sell these things to the bad guys. And so if we're able to pay security researchers to find these issues and say, hey, you might not be able to, like, you might be able to sell this bug to some government or whatever for $1 million. We can't pay that much, but we can pay you some money so that it's worth your time to actually tell us this bug, and we'll fix it and we'll get the release out.
Is WordPress part of like HackerOne or?
Yeah, so we use HackerOne, and we've found it to be a really good system for people to be able to report the issues, make sure that they get paid, that researchers also, they have their own reputation there, and so they can show if they want to then work for a company, then they can say, hey, I've found all these issues and I'm pretty good at this. Maybe you should pay me to do it with your.
Yeah, I it sounds to me like you do what I do, which is you had quite an interest in the internet security stuff. I listen. I mean, I don't really understand a lot of what's going on, but I listen to the Pwn to Own contests and things like that, and it's just breathtaking. Like you said, you get one buffer overflow, which leads to a thing over here, which you stack another thing, and 10 exploits later, you've managed to change the user permission or something.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, it is pretty cool and slightly worrying.
Yeah.
I just wonder if in the end we just need to go, bad guys, they've won.
I don't think we're ever going to be in the situation where, well, bad guys have won. There are certainly ways that it becomes, as these things become more, as these bugs that they exploit become more complex, it becomes harder to fix them. You can even see that with there are issues that affect CPUs themselves, that a security issue can be triggered from a browser that affects a CPU, which is amazing. And so, but like we see that with the browser, the people who make Chrome or make Firefox or Safari or even Internet Explorer, where they'll respond to that and they'll work on a way to mitigate that issue so it can't be exploited.
Does WordPress have a voice in that decision? Do you guys on some level communicate with Google or Mozilla and say, look, we've got data, we can see what's going on, we are 34% of the internet. Do you have lines of communication?
Absolutely. Like we'll talk to their teams if there's whether it's a bug that affects WordPress or even the other way around. If they're making a change to the browser, then WordPress is something that they'll test against. Even like the people that make PHP, for example, it's one of their key things is like, what's the performance of WordPress when we make this change?
Do you want WordPress to have a voice in that? The future of the internet. Because obviously Facebook's in that conversation, Google's in that conversation. They're profitable entities, whereas WordPress, not for profit, sort of. Do you think we deserve a bigger voice than we've got?
I think it's difficult to say WordPress should have a voice. It's not a black and white issue. It's a lot of as with any kind of politics, it's a case of knowing who you need to talk to get something changed, whether it's something that you can realistically change or if perhaps you need to compromise on this one in favor of something else. And I think that that's where it can be difficult for us to have say WordPress must have a voice. We kind of already do, but it's not going to be a case of because WordPress said this, then that's how it's going to be.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's everything I want to ask, unless you want to say something pointed and particular.
No, I think I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast and kind of talking about mental health in WordPress community. I think that there's there are certainly issues in broader open source. Like I can see it as a lead in WordPress. Like there are issues where people are burnt out. We get people are passionate about about what they're working on, and that's a lot of what drives open source and drives WordPress. But it can be very easy for that passion to go too far, and it can be easy to devote everything to it. And so I think being able to have these conversations, and sometimes they're going to be difficult conversations, but being able to have these conversations where we say, okay, we're putting too much pressure on one person, or we're relying on a handful of people to make these difficult decisions. How can we have a way that we can spread that load around? How can we make the decisions a bit easier? How can we make sure that people can be passionate about WordPress, and they can have that they're able to have make a difference, and like with what's an important project, but not need to put everything into it and burn themselves dry.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of people. Like, I feel really proud of being involved in this idea. I mean, I'm very proud to be in any way associated with WordPress. Using WordPress makes me feel proud. Being involved with this charity, that's something else. It makes me slightly more proud.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. But you're right. I mean, I sort of, when I was thinking about what to say to people in this corridor, I didn't really know whether touching on those things would be, because people might not wish to open up. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I think it's really important work, and it feels like something which didn't happen for historical reasons, but it feels like something which now should be seriously considered in amongst all the other stuff that WordPress has to consider, making sure that we're all safe, and happy and mentally fit for the next day.
It's something that I think that as a society we're becoming more aware of. This is not a WordPress specific issue. It's a global issue, and so if we're able to learn from how society is improving, and we're able to have those conversations, and I think that we can. This is it's in much the same way. Like, we will improve the software, we can improve the environment that builds the software as well.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice way to end it, I think. Gary, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Great.
One of the purposes of the Press Forward podcast is to lift the lid on topics that don't get talked about enough, to allow people to share their stories so that other people might listen, and by listening they may gain an understanding that they're not alone. There are other people out there who have faced the same situations that you're facing. They have found a way through and can offer support to you on your journey. Maybe that person is already in your life, but they might not be. And that's what WP and Up is here for, to connect you with the support that you need. The Press Forward podcast is brought to you today by Green Geeks. Green Geeks offers a specially engineered platform that gives WordPress users web hosting that is designed to be the fastest, most secure and scalable hosting available in multiple data centers. Their WordPress hosting makes deploying and managing WordPress websites easy, with Automattic one-click install, managed updates, real-time security protection, SSD RAID 10 storage arrays, Power Cacher, and expert 24/7 help to make for the best web hosting experience. And we really do thank Green Geeks for their support of the Press Forward podcast. That's it for this week. Please let us know if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're finding it useful or helpful. You can reach out to us at wpandup.org/contact. But remember that there's a serious point to all of this, and that is that WP and Up is here to provide help and support. That help is available for you or people you know, and can be easily accessed at the wpandup.org website. Please spread the word about this podcast. Tell your friends and subscribe on your favourite podcast player. Remember that together we can #press forward.